to our discussion today about application knowledge and why should we care and what can we do about it. It might seem like a strange topic to discuss, but let's review a little bit about why application knowledge is critical to the business. Now, over the years, organizations are increasingly dependent on computer applications to manage and deliver business services. Today, everything's automated. The automation of business processes has also resulted in a corresponding loss of business process knowledge. Now, this is a key factor. Business process knowledge is now buried in the application code. So if you think about it, an insurance company that processes claims, if they didn't have their claims processing system, do their claims processors actually know enough about the business rules to process claims manually? I doubt it. Most of them are very heavily dependent on the applications, and therefore, if there are any issues or availability problems with the applications, they really cannot conduct business. Now, once I put these applications in production, supporting them and operating them means that the people who are in charge of that have to have knowledge of the technology, they have to have knowledge of the application design and the application components, and they have to know the supported business processes. In other words, when does the business use the application, how do they use it, why do they use it, what do they expect out of it? The problem with all of this knowledge is that most of it is typically undocumented, and if it is documented, it's usually not maintained, so if it's not current, it can't really be trusted. Well, as a result of all of that, if I don't have people who know the applications, then what happens is if I have a disruption, it takes a lot longer to restore the application functions, and it increases the disruption to the business. The other piece of this is that if I'm going to try and move people around, if I bring a new person in or if I need to transfer somebody, replacing that knowledge is time-consuming and disruptive. And if you all think back to when was the last time you tried to bring a person into your organization to replace somebody who was leaving? I mean, how long did it take to get them productive so that they knew everything they need to know? That's usually measured in terms of months. Well, let's talk about some of the issues that affect application knowledge. Well, first of all, many applications that are running today are older legacy applications. They are aging, they are undocumented, and in some cases they even use obsolete technologies. The original documentation for most applications, this includes both today's applications as well as older ones, consists of detailed design specifications, user guides, and these typically are not kept up to date as changes are made to the system, so they can't really be trusted. And secondly, in most cases, they're not in a standard format. So I can go to one area and the documentation is in one format. If I go to a different application, it's in a completely different format, and it's a lot harder for me to move people around that way. Support knowledge, what it takes to operate and support these applications and enhance them and support the business, is primarily in the heads of the internal support staff or contractors and cannot easily be transferred. All right, this increases risk and cost and limits staffing flexibility. I mean, what happens is we create a support team of 10 people, and even if those 10 people aren't busy, we can't easily move them to another area because it takes too long to retrain. The other part of it is that business organizations have an increased dependence on IT support staff to research and explain how undocumented business rules are processed. If you recall earlier, I said that because the processes are automated, the business no longer maintains detailed business process documentation. So if they want to know why a particular claim was rejected, they actually have to call up IT, and a systems person has to go in and research that and explain it to them. That generates even an increased dependence on the level of knowledge that a support person has, and also creates a dependence with the business and IT. And as I said before, this problem is not limited to older systems. It is exactly the same problem with any new system that's put into production. As a matter of fact, in many cases, it can be worse with new systems because Object-oriented technologies allow you to bury business logic in a lot of different places, and it's very difficult to locate it in order to answer questions. And also, the newer systems tend to have more user functions and a higher level of complexity. So the problem is actually getting worse and not better as we replace legacy systems. Let's talk a little bit about the human factor. Obviously, as I mentioned before, in order to keep the applications running and to enhance them and solve problems, we need people. So we need a stable, knowledgeable staff. Because of the lack of documentation and the difficulty in sharing knowledge, basically once a person learns the application, they have to stay with it for a long time to avoid disruption. One of the things that makes it, we have an advantage today over, let's say, the 1990s. And the advantage that we have is because of economic considerations, there isn't as much staff turnover today as there was 10 or 15 years ago. What that means is that organizations have benefited from the fact that the same people have stayed around for long periods of time, and they get to keep that knowledge. Well, the problem is those same people who've been around for a long time are also getting ready to retire, and we're going to see that in a minute. But the other penalty for this, yes, if I can keep my staff, and yes, I can keep them in the same area supporting the same system for a long time, but what I do is I lose organizational agility. If I have a large number of projects in a different area that I need to staff, and I don't have enough work in another area, I can't easily move resources around because of the problems in the disruption I would cause if I move the people, and also the amount of time it takes to share the knowledge. And then, as I mentioned before, one of the things that has really caused companies to take a serious look at this is that they have a lot of people in their mid to late 50s who are working on these applications, and they will all begin retiring en masse and take that knowledge with them. If we look at what some of the industry analysts have said, 2005 marks the beginning of the baby boom exodus from the workforce, and every 7 seconds another baby boomer will turn 60 for the next 18 years. That is a very scary number, and the source of that is continuity management. And if you think about it, the first place that really started to place a priority on this, the first organization, is the business continuity planning and disaster recovery, because they're the ones who are analyzing risks and identifying, where issues are, and what they're doing is they're recognizing that as all these people start to retire, there's going to be a huge knowledge drain and a lot of possible risk from that. So by 2010, which is not very far off, 60% of the experienced management team will retire because the management team tends to be older. So there is a significant issue that will impact all of us here over the next 5 to 10 years. And as I said, there was a fair amount of complacency over the last 5 or 10 years because of the stability of staff, but that is going to end. Well, let's talk a little bit about the return on investment. If you go out there and actually do something about capturing and documenting and sharing application knowledge, the productivity cost, if I lose a person and I have to replace them, the productivity cost is 85% of that person's base salary. In other words, I need 1.85 people to produce the same amount of productivity that one person used to generate for me for an extended period of time until the new person becomes as efficient as the old person was. So there is definitely a huge financial impact, and I can absorb that impact if I lose one person or two people, but if I start losing 20 or 30 people, as you can see, the cost is much greater. And where does that cost come from? Well, first of all, newer people who don't know the systems as well will make mistakes. So there will be rework and there will be business disruptions because of it.